Hello and welcome to today's online lecture on applying to Revolutionary War lineage societies. My name is Ginevra Morse. I'm the Vice President of Education and Programming here at American Ancestors. I will be your moderator for today's program. American Ancestors is a nonprofit organization supported by our members and donors. We provide resources and expertise in nearly all aspects of family history and are pleased to offer such programming for our members and friends around the world. This program today is brought to you by the Brew Family Learning Center. Your instructor is Lindsay Fulton, Vice President of Research and Library Services. Lindsay is a nationally recognized professional genealogist and lecturer who joined American Ancestors back in 2012. In addition to helping constituents with their research, Lindsay has authored A Portable Genealogist on the topics of applying to lineage societies and the United States Federal Census 1790 to 1950, and is a frequent contributor to the NEHGS blog Vita Brevis. Her areas of expertise include state and federal censuses, New England, Ireland, and New York research with a focus on research methodology and organization. Lindsay also oversees the research team working on the 10 Million Names project. So with the 250th anniversary of the Revolutionary War fast approaching, you may be interested in documenting your family connection to an American patriot and applying to a lineage society. Today, we'll take a step-by-step look at applying to Revolutionary War lineage societies, including the application process and tips for when you can't find those vital records. The lineage societies covered today will be the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, Sons of the American Revolution, Sons of the Revolution, the Society of the Cincinnati, the Orders of the Founders and Patriots of America, and the Boston Tea Party Descendants program. Lindsay will present for about 45 minutes, and then we will have time for questions at the end. At any point during the presentation, go ahead and type your question into that Q&A panel that you see at the bottom of your screen. There is a syllabus available for purchase at our online bookstore. You will find a link to that in your reminder email. I'll also include a link to it in my follow-up email, and in just a moment, I'll also put it in the chat panel. We are recording this event, and starting later today, you can also freely go back and review any of the content from the presentation on our website, as well as our YouTube channel. All right, so without further ado, I will turn things over to Lindsay.
Thank you, Ginevra, and welcome everyone. We are going to discuss lineage societies and applying to them, specifically those that are focused on preserving and honoring the memory of our ancestors who served in the American Revolution. I'm going to talk, there are many of them, more than what we're going to go over today. I'm going to talk about some of the most popular ones, but just know that there's others out there that you can apply to as well. So the popular Revolutionary War lineage societies we're going to go over today are the National Society Daughters of the American Revolution, also known as DAR, the Sons of the American Revolution, also known as SAR, Sons of the Revolution, that's right, it's known as SR, and the Society of the Cincinnati, the Orders and Founders of Patriots of America, and the Boston Tea Party Descendants program. I'm going to talk a little bit about what makes each of these different organizations unique, and then we're going to talk about some of the best practices when you are filling out or first looking for and then documenting and filling out your application. So the Daughters of the American Revolution is founded in 1890. That society is looking for women over the age of 18 who can prove lineal descent from a patriot of the American Revolution. Now, a patriot of the American Revolution to DAR doesn't necessarily mean someone who is serving in a militia or in a military capacity. It also can be what we call patriotic service. Patriotic service can be something like providing blankets to the troops, providing quarter to the troops. Maybe someone is serving in a more political function, like serving on a committee of correspondence or signing the Declaration of Independence. It doesn't necessarily need to be someone who is serving in the military. When you're applying to the National Society of the Daughters of the American Revolution, it's actually going to be done on the local level. So you're going to contact the membership liaison on the local level. That's where you're going to be going to meetings, interacting with other members. It will be through the local level, but you're going to be actually approved on the national level. To learn more about DAR, their website is noted at the bottom there. The National Society of the Sons of the American Revolution is very similar to what the folks at DAR are doing. Founded just a year before in 1889, they are looking for men who are over the age of 18 who can prove lineal descent from a patriot of the American Revolution. Again, a patriot of the American Revolution to both DAR and SAR are very similar. It can be someone who is providing military service, but also someone who is serving in a patriotic function. Again, providing quarter, serving in a military capacity, but also a political capacity as well. Something that I want to just mention is that most of these societies are by invitation only, and that doesn't necessarily, it sounds very exclusive, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you need to have like a formal invitation sent to your home. It just means that you need to go to that organization and say, I'm interested in joining, and then they would then say, okay, great, you're going to fill out this application. This is the information that I need. You need to provide some you need to let them know ahead of time that you're interested in joining. You can't just send them an application without having communication with them first. So that's what I mean by invitation only. Sons of the Revolution is different than SAR. You will notice that they are founded a year after SAR. So I'll let you all make your own conclusions as to why the two are different. But what the Sons of the Revolution are looking to do is looking for lineal descendants of a person who served as a soldier, sailor, marine under the colonies or the Continental Congress. So this is someone who is serving in a military capacity. The only other way that you can apply is if someone is signing the Declaration of Independence, is a member of the Continental Congress or Colonial Congress. There's no other way to join under patriotic service. So the patriotic service portion of Sons of the Revolution is just these three very specific individuals or people qualifying under Declaration of Independence, member of Continental Congress or Colonial Congress. Their website is at the bottom there. The Society of the Cincinnati is very complicated, and I will do my best to explain it in this one slide. So the Society of the Cincinnati is founded in 1783. It's founded by commissioned officers of the Revolution. So they are looking for the current members who are applying to the Society of the Cincinnati are male descendants of those commissioned officers who served in the Continental Army or Navy. They had to have served until the end of the war or had at least 3 years of service. There's also some other ways that you can join. So for example, if someone was a prisoner of war, if someone was killed in action, they might also be considered qualifying ancestors for this particular organization. Now, they're looking for people with continental service, not militia service. So your ancestor may have been an officer in the militia, but that doesn't mean that they were an officer in the Continentals, and in which case they most likely will not have qualifying service. The other complicated portion of this is representation is done per member, per eligible officer. So you can only represent, there's only one current living person who can represent an officer at any given moment. Each state organization has their way of either passing that down. So sometimes if you're a father and you want to give that seat to your son, there's usually a way to do that. You'd have to let the membership person know about that at the Cincinnati level. And in other cases, if someone was representing the seat and died and they didn't give it to someone else in their family, each state society has their own number of years that need to pass before you can then take over that seat. So sometimes it's 25, sometimes it's 10, sometimes it's more than that. It's all going to depend on that particular organization. So definitely be sure to contact them and let them know that you're interested in joining. They also have a little bit more of a strict by invitation only policy. You usually need to know someone or get to know someone who's involved in the Society of Cincinnati in order to join. The last thing that I will say, because I'm trying to make this as complicated as possible, the last thing I'll say about the Society of Cincinnati is that when you join in the state that your ancestors served, not necessarily where you are living. So if you are living in Massachusetts and your ancestors served in New Jersey, you're going to join New Jersey. You can go to parties and stuff that happen in Massachusetts, that's fine. But in order to, the society that you're joining is the state where your ancestors served. There are many state societies that have put out published volumes that are biographies of those original members or those qualifying officers. This can be exceptionally important if you think you are a descendant of one of these officers, but they have a common name, or you don't know if it's the same person who served, right? We talk in genealogy a lot about one and the same. So the same Benjamin Allen, Captain Benjamin Allen, who serves from New Hampshire, is that the same Benjamin Allen who's my 7th great grandfather? Sometimes that's difficult to determine. These published volumes can be incredibly helpful to identify who that person was, who they married, who their children were, who their parents were. So look out for that. If you're interested in joining, look to see if there is a published volume for that particular state chapter. We just did one, American Ancestors just did one for the Society of Cincinnati in the state of Connecticut. It is 3 volumes. It's incredibly helpful. I worked on it. It was a lot of work. We were very proud of it. So definitely check that out if you have ancestry from Connecticut. Not to be outdone, Orders of the Founders and Patriots of America, also a little complicated. And I'll do my best to explain it for you. So they are founded in 1896. This is a society that males join the society, 18 plus. The proven descent has to be from an ancestor who settled in the colonies before 50 years after Jamestown founding, which is the 13th of May, 1657, and whose ancestor in the same line served in the Revolution. So you need 2 qualifying ancestors for this particular organization. The application is approved by the Registrar General, but your membership is through the state society. They also have a very particular set of lines that they will consider as qualifying lines. And I have visual representation for this so that you can kind of follow this with me. It's a little complicated. You as an individual can apply, there you are, the applicant. You can, as an individual, can apply to Founders and Patriots if you have a patriot and a founder on the same line through either your paternal grandfather or your maternal grandfather. So that's either of your parents' surnames. You cannot apply if that line happens to be on your paternal grandmother's line or a maternal grandmother's line. So you'll notice that there's X's after that. So that's the first pathway for you to join. So when you're looking at your family tree, that's what you want to be focusing on. Now, to further complicate things, as you can tell, that is a little complicated, and it does restrict qualifying membership. So the organization decided very recently to make a change to their rules, and they will allow people to join if their ancestor was alive on or after March 16th, 1896, and is a male. So you'll notice them in the kind of the middle of this section here. So that qualifying ancestor had to be living at the time, because they could, in theory, they could have joined orders and founders of Patriots. Okay. So then you want to look at it from as if they were applying. So that person's paternal grandfather or that person's paternal grandmother or maternal grandfather. So the qualifying ancestor is the paternal grandfather or the maternal grandfather. So again, the surname of that individual who was living on or after March 16th, 1896. And again, in the same line, there's a patriot or a founder. Very complicated, I know. This visual representation is available on the Orders and Founders and Patriots website. So you can review if you're looking at the right line and getting it correct. Now, we've been talking about old lineage societies, ones that have been around for a while, but we have a newly minted lineage society called the Boston Tea Party Descendants Program, which is founded in 2023. This is looking to honor those individuals who participated in the Boston Tea Party. Now, when you participated in the Boston Tea Party, you were committing treason, you were committing a crime. So they did not write their names all down on a list and raise their hand and say that they were there. Also, there's only a certain number of men that could actually have been on the boat that night to have thrown tea into the harbor. And it doesn't constitute enough people for us to find a big descendancy pool. So what we decided to do was expand that participant program so that it's men who threw and destroyed the tea, and then also people who had a political impact on the Tea Party actually happening. That's looking at the Loyal Nine, the Boston Sons of Liberty, the North End Caucus, St. Andrew's Lodge, which is the Mason Lodge in Boston, the Ship Guard volunteers, and then the signers of the November 1773 petitions to the town selectmen. These people are, some of them are also destroying the tea, but not all of them. But they are still heavily involved with the events that happen in December of 1773. It's because of the political impact that all of these folks have that the Tea Party actually happens. So you can apply to this program under any of those individuals. And we have lists of those individuals on the American Ancestors website. They're also on the Boston Tea Party Descendants Program website. That's one tier of membership that you can join under. The other tier is looking at eyewitnesses to history. So that's people who are living in Boston in 1773, and then those where family lore is putting them there at that time, but we're not really able to prove it with or unprove it with documentation. So in that case, you can apply under eyewitness to history. And if you're like me and you have no connection to Boston prior to you moving to Boston, which is me, I can apply under a co-conspirator. It means I'm supportive of the Boston Tea Party Descendants Program and what they're doing at the Boston Tea Party Ships and Museum, but I don't have any ancestral connection to the events in December of 1773. So you can apply as a co-conspirator. So there's three levels of ways that you can join as a member. I did a webinar a few months back when we first announced this program. So if you're interested, please take advantage of listening to that. It's a free webinar that's available at the American Ancestors Video Library. Okay, now that we've talked about all the lineage societies that exist, we need to figure out if we have a line that can actually apply. So before we start choosing which one we want to join, we need to figure out if we can join. In order to do that, we establish our ancestral line. I like to create a family tree because it's kind of a roadmap that shows me who can apply, where people are living. So this is just kind of a quick example. This actually shows a Mayflower line. But you can see where people are living because there's folks, you want to make sure that someone is of military age or adult age during the revolution, right? So when you look at this, you can think about it in that particular way. It's also incredibly helpful if you're going to try to join Order of the Founders and Patriots, because again, that's very complicated, right? And I'm a visual person, so it's easier for me to see that visualization. So I definitely recommend doing your family tree as much as you possibly can. So extending all those lines back as far as you can, so that then you can identify who was living at the time of the revolution, and then what service they may have had. You may have an officer of the Continentals, in which case you can apply under the Society of Cincinnati. You might have someone living in Boston in 1773, in which case you can apply to the Boston Tea Party Descendants program. You just want to get a sense of where you can apply. And the reason that you want to do this is because you want to know what you're like, what do you want to get out of it? Member societies have different levels of participation. Maybe you want to be really active in your community. Maybe you don't really want to be that active in your community, but you'd like to commemorate the name of your ancestor and the memory of your ancestor by applying to the society. You want to think about how often do they meet? Is it a local chapter that's near you? Is it something that you're going to be doing on the state level? You just want to get a sense of like what that organization is doing and the work that they're doing. And if you want to be involved in the work that they're doing, in which case then you can join that particular Lineage Society. And I should say that you're not limited to one. If you join SAR, you can join SR. I know a whole bunch of guys who are in both. So don't feel like you're being limited to one or the other. You can join many, as long as you have qualifying ancestors. Once you figure out where you want to join, then I really want you to contact the membership liaison. Like, I want you to make it known to that particular organization that you're interested in joining. That's because they can give you the most up-to-date information on the application process, fees, dues, timelines, when they meet, when they don't meet. They know that you're interested. You can let them know at that point who might also be in that Lineage Society. It's just a way for you to introduce yourself to them. Now, you're probably thinking, well, who do I contact? It's really important to go to the website of that particular organization, because it's always one of the first things they're going to offer as next steps is going to be contacting with your interest in that organization. And they're going to put you in touch with the right person. But just kind of so you know, if you're interested in applying to DAR or SAR, that's going to happen on the local level. You can still go to the dar.org website, and if you say that you're interested in joining, you put in your name, your address, they're going to put you in touch with the local person who will then be in touch with you about next steps and how to apply and how to get your stuff together. Same with SAR. Society of Cincinnati and the Sons of the Revolution, that's going to happen on the state level. Again, you can still find the contact information on the website. This is going to be incredibly important for those individuals who are interested in joining Society of Cincinnati. It's really important that you contact them, because every state is so specific on what they require and what their rules are. So you just want to be sure to contact them. You also want to know if the seat is open. So if you have a commissioned officer in your line, you want to know if the seat's open and still available. And then the society on the national level, is Boston Tea Party and Orders and Founders and Patriots. But again, going to the website is going to get you the best contact information. Now that you know where you want to join, now I want you to do the boring thing, which is to organize and document. No, I'm kidding. It's very exciting doing research. But I want you to organize yourself. And you're going to need to be organized because completing an application for a lineage society is one of the most, to me, one of the most scholarly ways to prove that your line is accurate. Because they are very specific on what they like for documentation. So my suggestion to you when you're organizing yourself is to create what we call at American Ancestors a qualification outline. And that is going to force you to find documentation for each person in the line. So from you to that qualifying ancestor, all of the spouses who are marrying into all of this to the line as well. And then you have to provide citations for all of it. During this process, we're also going to properly mark our documents. It is very important for you to realize at this point that every lineage society has a different way of marking documents. Some like you to underline, some like you to put an arrow, some like you to put generation 1 in the top right-hand corner. They are all different. And I swear they're all different on the local level too. So if I tell you to do something for Orders and Founders and Patriots or for SAR, it might be different next week. So I definitely want you to contact them to make sure that you know exactly how they would like you to mark it at this day and time. I just want to make sure you're doing it right because it's so annoying once you mark a document to have to unmark the document because it's obviously for obvious reasons. So to create the qualification outline, you want to start with yourself as generation 1. And please don't start in the past. You always want to start when you're doing genealogy with, from what you work from the present to the past. So start with generation 1, include your name, where you were born, when you were born, and if you're married, who you were married to, and then that name of the spouse and where they were born, both the location and the date. And then I want citations for everything. So we need a citation for that birth. We need a citation for the marriage. And we need a citation for the spouse's birth. You're going to go citation happy when it comes to creating the qualification outline. And the reason that it's important to make the qualification outline is that it forces you to realize when you are missing something. Because if you don't have citations for all of this, then you cannot put it on the application. You might know that your ancestors from New York City, but if you don't have a document that says they are from New York City, you can't write on the application that they're from New York City. So this qualification outline will force you to do that. I like to keep each generation separate. So generation 1 I usually do a different page for each. You don't have to do it that way, but I like to do almost like a title page for each generation. There are some guidelines to citing, and when you're creating the qualification outline, I would suggest using the Guide to Genealogical Writing, which is by Penny Stratton and Henry Hoff, who worked for American Ancestors or still work for American Ancestors. Henry is the editor of the Register, and Penny used to run our publications team. So this is how we like to do things at American Ancestors. And when you're creating the qualification outline, that's something that's going to be done in Word, like a Word document file or a Word document, and not the actual application. The actual application, the citations on the actual application is all society. It's different on every society level. So I don't want to necessarily tell you how to cite each society right now, but this is just kind of generally how to cite a genealogical record is using the Guide to Genealogical Writing. Generation 2 is going to follow the same format. The name of your father, where they're born, when they're born, with a citation. If the person is deceased, when they died, where they died and when they died, with a citation. The marriage information, same thing, where and when, name of the spouse with the citation, and then your mother's name, and so on and so forth. And you're just going to follow this same process, generation 2, 3, 4. As you can tell, this is very text heavy and citation heavy. On purpose, should be done that way. So it's really important to cite as you write. If you don't cite as you write, then you're going to have a whole bunch of work to do at the end of the process, which is really disconcerting. If you cite as you write, then things are much easier. I know we've all been talking about this since we've probably been in elementary school. It's important to write to write down while you're researching. Same thing with doing genealogy. It also helps you to capture what you're doing in the moment. You don't have to like go back and find something. Okay, so generation 3, same thing. Name of your grandfather, birth, marriage, death, name of the spouse. If anyone in your line is married a second time, you should include information about that second spouse as well as their birth and death information. Many societies like to see information for the second spouse because it helps you to verify that that is the same person. So say, for example, the line goes through a female and that female was married 3 times. So their birth name is going to be different than their marriage name, which is going to be different than their deceased name, in which case you need documentation to show that it's the same person, even though it's 3 different names. That's why it's important to show the information about the second spouse. Now, when we're documenting our ancestral line, we're trying to do this as much as we possibly can with vital records. Vital records tend to be the record that provides all of the details that you're looking for here. Birth, date, birth location, names of parents. Depending on the state, they might be held at the state level, at the county level, at the town or the city level. It all depends on where it's happening. It also depends on when that state, county, town decided to start recording vital records. There may be privacy restrictions that's going to help limit access, but you may be able to get around that with what's called an informational copy or a genealogical copy. Always make sure that you're looking to see if a state or a county or a town has that as an option. Because sometimes the clerk will tell you, like, I can't give that to you because we're a closed record state. They might be a closed record state, but they might also have an informational copy. Usually that means that they're redacting some portion of information on the record. So for example, many states that redact it are death records that will maybe redact a social security number or a cause of death. Still gets us what we need from a genealogical perspective. It's still going to give parents' names. We just don't know how the person died. There's unfortunately not a one-stop shop for where to order vital records. If you're in New England, the definite thing to get is the New England, the Genealogist Handbook for New England Research. We just did the 6th edition. Ancestry has a red book. It's at this point pretty out of date. So I recommend using the Family Search Wiki. The Family Search Wiki tends to be the most up-to-date place to look for information about ordering or getting a hold of vital records. The family search, so if you go to family search, so www.familysearch.org, when you're on that page, the top toolbar, there's a drop down that says wiki. If you go to the wiki, you can search Kansas death records, and it will bring up a page about Kansas vital records, usually information about where to order them, when they became available, like when they started to record them, if there's a online version available, all that kind of stuff will be on the Family Search Wiki. Then I want you to gather documents. And like I said before, it's really important for you to ask and talk to the membership liaison about what you should be doing to a document. Should you underline it? Should you put an arrow? Should you put generation 1 in the corner? Should you not mark it at all? Make sure you gather your documents together. I like to put all of the generations together with like a little paper clip. So generation 1 is all in a paper clip, 2 in a paper clip. That doesn't mean send paper clips once you're done with the application, because almost all lineage societies hate paper clips. But just while you're organizing yourself at home, that's what I like to do. If there's a discrepancy on a document, and this happens mostly with death records, the parents' names are like wildly off, but everything else is accurate. And it's your person because, the tombstone has the correct parents on it, say, but the death record itself doesn't. There are so many instances where the death record is wrong because you as an individual do not get to provide the information on your own death record. That is coming from someone else. And if that someone else is misinformed, they may give the wrong information. You still want to give that explanation to someone looking over your application. I usually like to do just a quick little, Word document that gives an explanation as to why it's incorrect, and just provide that along with the record, just to get ahead of why someone might ask a question about it. That's usually a quick explanation. If it needs like a really in-depth explanation, then you're going to do what's called a proof. And again, each lineage society has their own format for how they like to see what we call a proof. And a proof is typically like you need 6 or 7 documents together to form an argument that the person is the right person. But if there's a small little discrepancy on something, I think just a quick little Word document explaining it is perfectly fine. The last step is you're going to complete your application, submit, and wait. Some lineage societies, super fast. Some take a little bit longer. It all depends. The liaison is going to be able to tell you what to expect. Okay, so when you're completing your application, most of them look like this. Most of the first page has a lot to do with you personally, your name, your address, your email address, how you want the name to appear. This is an example from the Daughters of the American Revolution. There's spaces for the registrar to fill out. There's spaces for you to fill out. There's places where the national is going to fill it out. Most of the time, the first page is just that top portion, and it's information about your mailing address and whatnot. The second page usually goes into the lineage. So that's your name, your spouse's name, dates, date of birth, date of marriage, date of death, and that proceeds through your mother, your father, your grandfather, all the way up to the qualifying ancestor. And depending on the organization, sometimes the reference is underneath that generation, and sometimes it's on the second page, or the third page in this case. So on the DAR application, the third page is where you're putting the citations. So you'll see here that there's sections for each of those generations. And there's a little description at the top. See this little paragraph at the top? It's explaining how to cite some of those records. So like vital records should be cited as DC, MC, or BC. Again, just be sure that you're keeping up to date with what that particular organization wants you to do. The last page of the DAR application, and again, all of them are going to be, make sure you read the whole thing. The last page is specifically about the ancestor. So who the qualifying ancestor is, why they qualify, a description of that service, source citations for that service. And then there's some optional items on here. There's second marriages, again, just for the person who's qualifying, the qualifying ancestor, and then the names of the children, and then their birth dates and whatnot. Again, this is optional. I find it to be incredibly important, though, if I'm finding someone else's application while I'm doing research. So it's nice practice for your other genealogist friends. It all depends on the organization for how long the review process will take. Again, it's like sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes it's 6 months, sometimes it's a year. Here's an example from DAR on the process of applying. Again, you're going to tell them that you're interested. So you're determining the chapter, you're contacting that registrar. You're going to tell them what your lines are, or line. You're going to work with your registrar to determine which the best. So sometimes you might have 6 or 7 lines. They may suggest using one of those lines to get you in first, and then you do what's called a supplemental application. That's other applications that are splitting off from the line that you've submitted. Sometimes that's from like your parents' generation. Sometimes it's from your 4th great grandfather's generation. It all depends. But you usually apply under one line first and then do supplementals after that. You want to document your line back to your ancestor. The chapter is going to finalize what you have done. They're going to have you sign your application, pay your application fees. It's then sent to National. National will review it, and they'll either accept or reject it. If they accept it, you know, you're in, you go to the meetings, you do all the fun stuff. If you're rejected, you have 2 years to provide proper documentation. And they give you a specific list of items that they need you to provide if they are rejecting the application. So they'll say, like, generation 4, you need to prove the death of this individual because, there are 2 Joseph Smiths who die around the same time. I don't know, making it up, but they'll give you some explicit instructions on what they need. All right. Now, if you cannot find a vital record, an official vital record, which is going to be the case the further you get back in time, because they're just not going to be civil registrations by that point, you need to be a little creative in what you're using as a alternative record. I like to use Bible records as one of the first places to look. They're rare because you need the family themselves to be recording the record. But if those got donated, if a Bible record got donated to a local historical society or an archive or a place like American Ancestors, we might have an image of that you can submit as a record. If you're trying to find a Bible record, the first place that I go is Archive Grid. Archive Grid is a website. It's a free website. It works just like WorldCat, in that you can search for records in a particular area, and it will, or a particular surname, and it will search what's available under that surname or that specific person's name, and then you can get a hold of the actual record. I find Archive Grid to be incredibly helpful. You can use census records. I just want you to be careful when you're using census records that you're using. Okay, so before 1850, U.S. federal census records did not have the entire household listed together. So those tend to be more difficult to use. It's just the head of household and then a bunch of hash marks. It doesn't have like who the spouse's name and the children's names included. That is after 1850. So 1850, 1860, 1870, then you start to see that. In 1880, they actually start to provide the relationship of the household. So that tends to get a little bit difficult as well. Because it's not necessarily just because there's a male and a female and then a bunch of kids in the household. That doesn't mean that it's spouses that have children. Most of the case it is, but it's not always the case. So by 1880, you're going to get the relationships there. When you're providing this information to your lineage society, I want you to provide the full page of that census enumeration. Cemetery records can also be helpful. There's sometimes stones that provide the relationship between the individuals who are buried there. So in this case, Amy Ballou is notated as the wife of John Adams, and the death information is given there. There's many online cemetery databases that exist. Find a Grave is probably the most popular. If you're going to use this as proof, you have to show the actual image of the stone. You cannot use just the Find a Grave entry, because those are two different things. One is a user submitted information that's not coming from an actual record. The stone in this case is the actual record. Church records to me are also kind of like vital records. Many of them have been transcribed, the early stuff, most of it's been transcribed. You can find it at the American Ancestors Library. It's online, it's on Family Search. Church archives might have church records as well. Those might not have been transcribed, they might be original records. But always worth identifying your ancestors' religion to try to figure out what church they may have gone to then find either a baptism, a marriage, a burial that would provide not only the date that something happens, but the most important thing here is the connection between that person and either their parents or their spouse or their child, because you're trying to always connect generations when you're doing a lineage application. If you're going to include a transcribed item, whether that's a vital record, a church record, etc., you always want to include the title page for that published resource. All lineage societies like that. They like to see that title page. Deeds and land records can also be incredibly helpful. So that's identifying the relationship. It may identify the relationship between the grantor, which is the person selling the property, and the grantee, which is the purchaser. You'll also notice these can kind of serve as like a probate record, because it could be a plot of land that was inherited by a group of children, in which case all those children would be included. These tend to be a little bit harder and stickier to navigate. They're not, as easy to find, but they're a wealth of information. You can find them I find a lot of them at Family Search. If we're talking about United States land records, Family Search is kind of the first place to go. We have many at the American Ancestors Library that are specific to New England. One of the sticky wickets here with applying to lineage societies is local histories and documented genealogies. They're not always accepted. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. It all depends on the organization. The more recent the publication is, so like the more cited the publication is, the better. But that's also, on the flip side of that, the closer that publication was done to the time that person was living. So a lot of times this is what we call mug books, those county histories that are done of individuals providing like a biography of themselves. If that person is identifying their parents, that's almost as good as a marriage record. That's exactly what you do on a marriage record. You identify who your parents were. So those can be accepted as proof. And they're all over the place. They're at our website, they're on Google Books, they're at Family Search, they're at archive.org. You want to provide the title page if you're providing a local history or a documented genealogy. The final one I'll mention, and this is not the end of the list, but these are just some of the most popular, are probate records. And probate records, the one you're always looking for is a will, because the will can provide information about heirs. That's the spouse, the child, the grandchild, the siblings. It may also include death information. So you can use this almost as a death record. And in fact, it's even better than a death record because it usually provides all of the names of the heirs. Again, wealth of information for New England and Atlantic Canada is available at American Ancestors. Family Search has a sizable collection of probate records. And actually, Ancestry is starting to put many of those records online as well. Organizations will try to provide as much information about their own membership as they possibly can. Like they try to provide as many resources as possible. So I'm going to show you two examples from the DAR and SAR. We're going to look actually for the same person under both. So this is the DAR's website. This is what you'll see when you first log on to their site. And what I'd like you to do is use their genealogical research system, which you can do under where it says ancestor here. And when you click on there, it will give you the it'll give you a little explanation of what that database is doing, but it will also give you the option to search. And when you do a search, you can do a search for, I would say to do a search for the Patriot themselves, because that's where you're going to get the most information. So we're going to search for a Patriot that we know exists. Jonathan Poor, we know he was born in 1737. And that's a prime age to be serving in the American Revolution. When we do a search, you'll find information about that person's service in the American Revolution. So he's a captain in Massachusetts. He's born in 1737 in Newbury, which is in Essex County in Massachusetts. He dies in 1807. The service source is from Mass Soldiers and Sailors. It's coming from volume 12, page 559. The description of the service: he's at the alarm at Lexington, and he's serving with Colonels Samuel Garish, Jebediah Huntington, and Daniel Spafford. He also marries Sarah Dole. So you'll see on the bottom here, Sarah Dole. Jonathan Poor is a fairly common name, not super common, but that's going to help you to identify that that's your person, is by the spouse's name. And then also, of course, the birth and death information. But if all that matches, then you can say pretty confidently, that's my guy. I'm interested in more information about Jonathan. If you scroll down on this page, it will bring you to a list of all of the ladies who have applied under that particular ancestor. You'll see the national number is at the top there, so 9770. That's the first person who applied under that particular ancestor. But then there's all these other numbers afterwards. The closer that number is to 1,000,000, the closer you are to the present. So if you're interested in piggybacking on some of these applications, that's the number that you're interested in, the number that gets you closest to the present. Because DAR and many lineage organizations like the applications to be more recent because they were stricter about their citation standards the closer you get to 2023. If you click on, so we're going to click on that 9770. If you click there, it will bring you to Harriet Briggs, who is the first person who applied under that ancestor, Jonathan Poor. You'll see her national number there, 9770. She applied in New York. And then, of course, all that information is included there for Jonathan Poor. If you click where it says Purchase Associated Record Copy, you can click there and it will bring you to a page where you can purchase that. But here's a secret. You don't always have to purchase it. If you purchase the record copy, you'll get documentation that was provided as well. But if you just want to see what the line is, you can go see where it says Preview and Lineage. If you click there, it will bring you to the line as far as DAR will let you see, like from a privacy standpoint. So it's going to redact some of the more recent generations. But you can see there what the line is to Jonathan Poor. SIR does something similar. This is the SIR's homepage. If you go under genealogy to that drop down there, you can click on Patriot Research System. That will bring you to this page. You will then click on that yellow box that says Patriot Research System. And that will bring you to this page. You'll notice at the top there, then it gives you some options. So you can do a Patriot search, a member search, or a descendant search, or a biography search, or a cemetery search. But in this case, we're going to do a Patriot search because we're looking specifically at no, sorry, we're going to do a descendant search because we're looking specifically for the folks that applied under Jonathan Poor. So we're going to search for him the same way. Under the descendant surname, we're going to put Poor, then we're going to put Jonathan, and then we're going to put 1737. And the fun part of this is that then it gives you all of the names, the applications when the people applied, all of the names of people who applied under this particular ancestor. And if you are familiar with our organization and if you've heard of our chief genealogist, David Allen Lambert, you'll notice that he is down at the bottom there, applying in 2016 under Jonathan Poor, who's his direct ancestor. So you can see there that David applied under this. But that means that David is now cousins with all of these other people who are also applying under Jonathan Poor. If you click on there, so I clicked on David's. If you click on David's entry, you can then see, just as you did with DAR's site, what is available for the generational information for each of those generations. So you can see Alexander Livingston Poor and Callista Gale is the last generation that's available as generation 4. So he's born in 1848. Another fun part of this that I just wanted to point out is that they have a lot of genealogical resources on their website, the SAR website. So for example, like if you're interested in applying, there's a formatting guide for the application. There's information about, what to do when you don't find a vital record and you're trying to make a proof argument. All of that is available there. So if you're interested in applying to SAR, just be aware that there's many items that are available just on their website. So as a review, when you're thinking about applying to a lineage society, I want you first to just understand what your options are. So you want to establish your ancestral line, choose which one you like the best, or as many as you'd like. You contact your membership liaison, you organize and document your ancestral line. You marked up those documents however you're supposed to according to your membership liaison. Make sure you cite as you write. Make sure you create that qualification outline. And then you complete your application, submit, and wait. And then once you get in, then you get to do and partake in all of the fun activities that organization is participating in. One last thing that I wanted to make everyone aware of, we are about to enter the 250th year of when Rev 250 is starting. So this is a organization that is commemorating the events that led up to and also the revolution. So just as you know from the Boston Tea Party Descendants program, December 16th, we are going to reenact the 250th Boston Tea Party. And from that point on, then we're going to start with Rev 250. So they have a whole bunch of events planned, and they're going to continue to do that. So just be aware of that and just kind of check out what they're doing on rev250.org.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay, for your presentation. Before we get to your questions, and there are several in the Q&A panel, I wanted to let everyone know about a few upcoming events. So next Tuesday, December 12th, you can join our panel of experts, David Allen Lambert, Rhonda McClure, and Melanie McComb, as they provide suggestions and tips for getting family involved in your family history research. Sometimes they don't want to be involved, but you can lure them in. Also, starting in January, we have a 5-week online course on researching Revolutionary War Patriot ancestors. So again, if you'd like to learn more about your Patriot ancestor, find some more ancestors and relations to this time in American history, certainly join us starting January 3rd. Also coming up in January, we have an online webinar on the do's and don'ts of creating a coat of arms as we kind of march toward us hosting the International Congress on Genealogical and Heraldic Sciences in September of 2024. We continue to provide education about heraldry and how it can be really useful for family historians. So definitely join us on January 18th. You can learn more about these and all of our upcoming events at americanancestors.org/events. All right, so let's get to some questions. First of all, of course, we focused on kind of patriot lineage societies, but are there loyalist lineage societies out there?
Yes, there are. There's there's um, there's there's loyalists, there's folks who served specifically at Valley Forge. There's yes, so there's a variety of, I'm trying to remember the name of it right now, but there's a variety of lineage societies that are on kind of both sides of the camp when it comes to the American Revolution. And yeah, so if you have ancestry like that, definitely something to look into.
Several people have asked, and I think you hinted at this when you were looking at the DAR applications on their website, but if you have a relative, a first cousin, a great aunt, a grandparent, an aunt, a mom, a dad, whomever, who have already joined some of these lineage societies, is your process any easier? Can you just kind of show your link to that relative?
In most cases, yes. It is a lot easier, and usually you just have to show your link to that relative. It all depends on when that relative applied, and it all depends on what that particular organization takes as its cutoff. So almost all of the lineage societies have what they consider to be the cutoff of what is a generally accepted application. So if it's 1997, it's usually the application number that they provide as the cutoff, but it's usually fairly recent, and it's probably from like the 90s to the 2000s even, that they'll accept as a acceptable lineage application. And that's just because the process has become more specific and strenuous as time has gone on. So depending on what your connection is, so the person who applied, depending on what your connection is to that person, it's usually just providing the information for yourself, your parents, and then if it's your second cousin, your grandparents. And once you make that connection, then you're all set. So for example, I applied to the DAR and got in, and my aunt was then interested. So when she applied, she really just had to show that she was related to my grandparents. And then so she just showed her birth record and a couple of her marriage records, and then she was able to apply to the DAR using my approved application. So one thing to note, when you're looking on several of these sites, you might not know that a very recent person in your ancestry has applied. So that's another reason why it's super important for you to contact that membership liaison, because they usually have more access to these databases than just the general public does. So they can see, like, oh, you didn't know, but your second cousin applied or your first cousin applied 3 years ago. So let's just use that application. So definitely contact the membership liaison first.
Um, Another question from a listener, what is the benefit for African Americans to join a Revolutionary War lineage society? Are African American members welcomed?
Of course, absolutely. The folks who the qualification is that it's people who served in the Revolution, and there was a ton of African Americans who served in the American Revolution, or who provided what we were talking about before, like patriotic service. Again, it depends on the organization. So if it's DAR and SAR, they have patriotic service, in which case the person could have provided, horses, food, shelter. And if your ancestor, fits into that qualification, then of course, you can apply and become a member.
A few people are asking about DNA. Can DNA be used to maybe as a vital records alternative or to support a lineage.
Mm, mm. So each organization is going to be different. I know I keep saying that, but each organization has their own way of accepting DNA. Typically, DNA starts to break down or mutate after 4 or 5 generations. So it's really tricky to use it to like connect you, a living person, to someone who's served in the revolution. I would say I always feel most comfortable using DNA to kind of connect you, living person, to the most recent 3 to 4 generations. And even then, you're going to need documentation to support whatever you have in terms of DNA results. So it needs to be a combination of 2 things. It can't just be DNA. It needs to be DNA in collaboration with documentation. There are some tests. So the what I just described there was what we call an autosomal test. So that's looking at all of your ancestry, your paternal line and your maternal line. There are some tests that you can take that look specifically at specific lines. That is a mitochondrial test, and which is a mitochondrial test is looking at your mother's 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 mother, and so on and so forth. So it can only really be used to prove that one generation. And then the other is what's called a Y-DNA test, and that's just looking at your paternal line. Only males can take that test, and that is looking at your father's 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 father, and so on. Those they don't mutate as quickly, so those tend to bring us back further generations. All of that being said, it's going to depend on what the organization is okay with as in terms of accepting DNA as proof. But say, for example, like you were your parent was adopted and you're using DNA to kind of prove what that biological connection was. I've heard of organizations using DNA as some of that evidence.
Unfortunately, we are out of time. I know that there were several questions that we didn't get to, but it sounds like, if people have questions about fees, if certain documentation will be kind of quote unquote good enough for the application, or if you're wondering, do I need to provide all of, all of my spouses, all of my information? Questions like that, Lindsay, do you recommend reaching out to the membership liaison of the Lineage Society that you're interested in?
Yes, yeah. So I know that I sound like a broken record, but many of these organizations have very specific rules for that specific um, lineage society. So you just want to be sure that you're following what is specific and pertinent to that lineage society. I do want to say, if you have a specific question that is genealogical in nature, so if you're like, is this good enough, or where do I find this thing, or I only have the index, where do I find the actual record? Definitely chat with a genealogist. It's on the screen right there on the bottom, americanancestors.org/chat. That is something that we provide for free Monday through Saturday, 9 to 5. You can chat with some of our expert genealogists, and they can either point you in the right direction or give you some advice. Many of them have done lineage applications. It's members of the research services team that man that chat. So definitely take advantage of that. If you have a specific question, they can usually help you navigate that as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Lindsay. Again, thank you everyone for tuning in this afternoon. You will be able to watch a recording of today's session on our YouTube channel as well as our website. You'll receive a follow-up email from me later today with a link to that recording. As I mentioned at the start of the program, there's also a syllabus available for sale. You'll find a link to that in my follow-up email. It was also in your reminder emails, and I will also post that along with the recording later today. But as you exit today's event, you will be presented with a survey. And as we continue to expand our webinars and online offerings, any feedback is very helpful and appreciated. This free webinar was made possible by the generous support of members and friends around the world. Please consider making a gift to American ancestors or becoming a member to help keep these programs free and to create others. And if you'd like to access more how-to resources or learn about upcoming online educational programs, visit us at americanancestors.org. Thank you again, and I hope to see you at our online programs in the future. Best of luck in your research, and goodbye for now.